Welcome to another deep dive with us. This time, we're going to be exploring John Truby's The Anatomy of Genres. I'm really excited about this one because it's already giving me a lot to think about, even just in the intro. He talks about connecting all these different genres like horror and myth and Western and even science fiction. And he does it in a way that really gets you thinking about some pretty big ideas, like, the nature of reality and how we understand ourselves.
One thing that jumped out at me right away was how Truby argues that stories aren't just entertainment. Like, we usually think of them as, just a fun way to pass the time.
Right.
But Truby says they actually shape our understanding of everything. I mean, everything from morality to culture, even our own sense of reality. It's kind of a mind-blowing idea, isn't it?
Yeah, it's huge. It's like he's saying that the stories we know actually become the lens through which we view the world.
Right. And he doesn't shy away from controversial topics either. He even talks about how things like war and politics are just different kinds of stories that we tell ourselves.
Oh, wow. So you're saying that the way we understand these complex events is actually shaped by the narratives we've been exposed to.
Exactly. And then he gets into genres, and this is where things get really fascinating. We usually think of genres as just categories, like horror, comedy, romance, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, Truby argues that they're much more than that.
Yeah.
He says they're actually like recipes for successful storytelling. Each genre has its own set of ingredients and instructions, you could say.
Okay, I like that analogy. So you're saying each genre has its own unique set of rules and themes and even like character archetypes?
Exactly. Like, you wouldn't expect to see a singing cowboy in the middle of a horror movie, right? It just wouldn't fit.
Right, it'd be totally out of place. It's like putting, I don't know, hot sauce in your chocolate cake or something. It just wouldn't work.
Exactly. But Truby actually thinks it's important to mix genres sometimes. But he says you have to do it strategically.
So like Star Wars, it's got elements of science fiction and Western and even myth all blended together. But it works because it follows certain genre rules within that blend.
Precisely. Star Wars is like a prime example of genre bending done right. Now let's dive into some specific genres, starting with horror.
Okay, let's get spooky.
Truby argues that horror forces us to confront our deepest fears, specifically those about death and the unknown.
That makes sense. Horror movies always seem to tap into those primal instincts we have, like that fight or flight response.
Exactly. And Truby traces the evolution of horror from those early supernatural tales to the more psychological thrillers we see today. He shows how our anxieties have become more internalized over time. Think about that scene in Alien where the creature bursts from Kane's chest.
Oh my God, that scene is burned into my memory. It's so disturbing.
Right. That's pure horror right there. It plays on our primal fear of the unknown and the visceral threat of death.
Yeah, you don't even have to be a fan of horror movies to know that scene. It's just so iconic.
It really is. But it also taps into something deeper, I think, something psychological.
So you're saying it's not just about the jump scares or the gore. It's about how those things trigger something deeper within us, something about our own mortality.
Exactly. And that's what makes horror so effective. It forces us to confront those fears in a safe environment, which can actually be, kind of cathartic in a way.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never thought about it like that before. It's like a controlled exposure to our darkest anxieties. Okay, so we're already getting pretty deep here, and we've only just scratched the surface of horror.
And there's so much more to explore. Next, Truby takes us into the world of myth, where heroes go on these epic quests for immortality and self-discovery.
Okay, I'm in. Who doesn't love a good hero's journey, right?
Yeah.
But I'm curious, do you think those ancient stories, those myths, are they still relevant for us today? I mean, the world is so different now.
That's a great question. And Truby argues that they are. He says these stories are about those fundamental human desires and challenges, the search for meaning, the struggle for identity, the battle against our own limitations.
Yeah, okay, I can see that. So it's not really about the gods and monsters. It's about those universal themes that we all grapple with, no matter who we are or where we come from.
Exactly. And he even connects those classic myths to modern stories like Avatar, which, if you think about it, follows that classic hero's journey of transformation and sacrifice.
Oh, yeah, that's true. I never really thought about Avatar as a myth before, but it totally fits that pattern, doesn't it?
It does, and that's what makes myth so powerful, right? These stories are so deeply ingrained in our collective consciousness that they continue to shape how we tell stories and how we understand the world around us. But it's not just about the past. It's about how we can use these ancient patterns to tell new and compelling stories today.
Okay, so far Truby is really blowing my mind. This is making me rethink everything I thought I knew about stories.
And we're just getting started. Next, he dives into action. And this one might surprise you. It's not just about explosions and car chases. Those are definitely part of the fun. Truby argues that action actually provides a framework for success in any field.
Wait, what? How does he connect action to success?
Well, he argues that action movies emphasize competition, achieving your goals, and overcoming obstacles. Think about films like Seven Samurai or Mad Max. Fury Road.
Yeah, I love Mad Max. Fury Road. That movie is just insane. But what does it have to do with being successful?
Well, think about the heroes in those films. They face these incredible challenges. They push themselves to their limits. They have to be strategic, resourceful, and just absolutely determined to achieve their goals.
So you're saying it's not just about physical strength, it's about mental toughness and resilience, the ability to adapt to changing circumstances.
Exactly. And those are qualities that are essential for success in any field, right?
Okay.
Whether you're an athlete, an entrepreneur, or just trying to navigate the challenges of everyday life.
Wow, that's so cool. I never thought about it like that. It's like action movies are actually giving us a blueprint for how to overcome obstacles and achieve our goals.
And Truby goes even deeper, connecting the action hero's journey to the idea of personal freedom. He suggests that achieving your goals, overcoming those obstacles, that it can lead to a sense of liberation, of self-discovery.
I love that. It's not just about winning the external battle, it's about the internal journey of growth and transformation.
Right. But he also points out the classic flaws of the action hero. Like they're often overly masculine, emotionally distant, unable to form lasting relationships.
Oh, yeah, that's true. It's like their strength also become their weaknesses in a way.
Exactly. And that can lead to a sense of isolation and loneliness, even when they achieve great ends. So it's not just about winning. It's
Right.
about finding that balance between strength and vulnerability, between action and connection.
Okay, that's a really insightful take on the action hero. And we haven't even talked about Westerns yet. Does Truby have any surprising insights about cowboys and gunfights?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and it goes way beyond just shootouts and saloons. Truby argues that the Western genre actually explores the complex process of building and dismantling civilizations. It's about the tension between individual freedom and societal order, the struggle to create a better world, while also grappling with, the costs of progress.
Okay, now that's interesting. It's like the Western is often set in this kind of liminal space on the edge of civilization where the rules are still being written.
Right. And he uses films like Shane to illustrate this point. Remember how we talked about Shane being the outsider who helps the townspeople, but ultimately he can't stay and be part of that community he helped create.
Yeah, that's such a classic Western image, the lone hero riding off into the sunset. But you're saying it's more than just a cool image, it's a statement about the nature of civilization.
Exactly. It's kind of a bittersweet reminder that progress often comes at a cost. And sometimes the very people who help build a better world are the ones who can't fully enjoy it.
That's such a powerful idea.
It is. And speaking of unsung heroes, Truby also dives into the world of the gangster, a genre that often explores the dark side of the American dream.
Okay, bring on the mobsters. I'm ready for a dose of gritty realism.
All right, well, Truby argues that gangster stories really expose the corrupting influence of power and wealth and ambition. He traces the evolution of the gangster, from those outlaws of the Wild West to the organized crime syndicates of the 20th century.
So it's like the gangster is a product of their environment.
Right.
They're driven by those same desires for success and recognition as anyone else, but they're operating within a system that's rigged against them.
Exactly. And Truby points out the importance of the city as a setting in gangster stories, highlighting the stark contrast between wealth and poverty and those limited opportunities for those who are struggling to make it.
Right. It's like the city itself becomes a character. It's a force that both shapes and corrupts the individuals who inhabit it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the gangster, in a way, kind of embodies that struggle, that desire to rise above their circumstances, even if it means compromising their morals along the way.
So it's a cautionary tale, right? About the dangers of unchecked ambition and the seductive allure of power.
Precisely. And it's a reminder that the American dream, for all its promise, can also be a breeding ground for corruption and despair, especially for those who feel excluded from those traditional pathways to success.
This is all so insightful. I'm honestly starting to see stories in a whole new light now.
Oh, too. Truby really has a way of making you think about these things. But before we move on, what's standing out to you so far? What's resonating with you about Truby's approach to storytelling?
I think what's striking me the most is how he connects these genres to universal human experiences, human anxieties, whether it's confronting our fears in horror or seeking meaning in those ancient myths or wrestling with ambition in gangster stories. There's this common thread that connects us to all these narratives. It's like he's saying that stories aren't just entertainment. They're a way for us to explore those big questions about life, death, morality, the human condition.
That's a great observation. And that common thread, that's really what makes stories so powerful. It's a way for us to process our emotions, to make sense of the world around us, and to connect with others who are, going through similar experiences.
All right, so we've talked about horror, myth, action, Western, and gangster so far. I mean, that's a lot. And I'm still kind of buzzing about how Truby connects those genres to those deep themes. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just entertainment. It's like he's giving us a whole new way to understand ourselves and the world.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, we're only scratching the surface. Truby goes into even more depth with each genre. He unpacks all these specific story beats and character archetypes. Like, remember how we talked about horror forcing us to confront our fears?
Oh, yeah. That was pretty intense. Like I said, I don't think I'm ever going to forget that alien scene.
Well, Truby actually links the evolution of horror to the shift from supernatural fears to more psychological fears. He argues that our anxieties have become more internalized over time. And that's reflected in the kind of horror stories we tell.
That's a really good point. Like, we're not really scared of vampires and werewolves anymore, but serial killers. Psychological manipulation, those are things that hit a little closer to home, you know?
Exactly. And Truby uses Edgar Allan Poe as kind of a prime example of this shift. He says Poe took horror out of the realm of castles and curses and brought it right into our everyday lives. He made us fear the ordinary.
Oh, I see what you mean. Like all those creepy, unsettling feelings that can come from seemingly normal situations. It's not the monster under the bed anymore, it's the darkness that's lurking in our own minds.
Precisely. Think about stories like The Telltale Heart or The Fall of the House of Usher. They tap into those deep-seated psychological fears, the ones that haunt us from within.
Oh yeah, good examples. It's like he's saying that the real monsters are often the ones that we create ourselves, the ones that live inside our own heads. And honestly, that's way scarier than any supernatural creature.
Right. And then Truby dives even deeper into these specific horror story beats. Have you ever heard of the concept of sins of the parents in horror?
I don't think so. What's that?
It's this idea that the sins of the past, especially those of our parents or ancestors, can come back to haunt us. It's this recurring theme in horror, exploring the legacy of trauma and the idea that we're not always free from the mistakes of those who came before us.
Whoa, that's heavy. So it's like we're inheriting not just their genes, but also their baggage?
Exactly. And it's a pretty powerful way of framing the human experience, I think. It suggests that we're all connected across generations and that the choices we make can have these ripple effects that extend far beyond our own lifetimes.
Okay, I'm starting to see how horror can be so much more than just jump scares and gore. It's really exploring these huge, huge ideas about human nature, about family, about the consequences of our actions.
Right. And Truby doesn't stop there. He actually makes this fascinating connection between horror and religion.
Wait, what? Horror and religion? Those seem like total opposites.
Yeah, I know, right? But Truby argues that they actually share some surprising similarities. He says that religion, with its focus on, sin and punishment and the promise of eternal life, it can actually be seen as a kind of horror story.
Okay, I think I see where he's going with that. Like the idea of hell and eternal damnation, that's definitely scary. And the concept of original sin, that we're all born with this inherent flaw, that's pretty dark too.
Exactly. And Truby even uses a Christmas Carol as an example. He highlights its roots in, the ghost story tradition, which is obviously a subgenre of horror.
That's wild. I mean, I love A Christmas Carol, but I never thought of it as a horror story before. But now that you mention it, yeah, those ghostly visitations, especially when you're a kid, pretty terrifying.
Yeah. And that story's message about redemption and the importance of community, that definitely ties into those larger themes of morality and the search for a good life.
It sounds like Truby is saying that horror and religion can both be ways to confront our fears, grapple with moral questions, and ultimately try to find meaning in a world that can feel pretty chaotic and unpredictable.
I think you nailed it. And it shows how those seemingly different genres can be exploring similar themes, just in different ways.
Okay, this is blowing my mind. I think I need a break from all this deep stuff. Let's move on to something a little less spooky. What about action? Does Truby have any more of those surprising insights about that genre?
Oh, he does. And again, it's not what you might expect. Truby breaks down action in a way that goes beyond just the explosions and the fight scenes. He argues that action actually gives us a framework for success in any field, not just on the battlefield or the boxing ring.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How does he connect action to success in the real world?
Well, he points out that action movies emphasize competition, achieving your goals, overcoming obstacles. Think about a movie like Seven Samurai. It's a classic action film, but it's also a masterclass in leadership, teamwork, and overcoming, those seemingly impossible odds.
For those of us who haven't seen Seven Samurai, can you give us a quick rundown of what it's about?
Sure. It's a Japanese film from the 1950s about a village that hires 7 samurai to protect them from bandits. But what makes it a great action story, according to Truby, is how it highlights those elements of strategic thinking, careful planning, and just this unwavering determination to succeed. The samurai have to work together, they have to come up with a clever plan, and then they have to execute it perfectly to achieve their goal.
So it's not just about being physically strong, it's about being smart, resourceful, having that willpower to see things through.
Exactly. And those are qualities that are essential for success in any field,
Right.
Whether you're an athlete, an entrepreneur, even just trying to navigate those everyday challenges of life.
Yeah, no kidding. It's like action movies are secretly giving us a blueprint for how to overcome obstacles and reach our goals.
And Truby goes even deeper. He connects that action hero's journey to the concept of personal freedom. He suggests that achieving your goals, Overcoming obstacles, it can lead to a sense of liberation, self-discovery.
Oh, I love that. It's not just about winning that external battle. It's about the internal journey of growth and transformation.
Right. But he also points out those classic flaws of the action hero. Like, they're often overly masculine, emotionally distant, and they have trouble forming lasting relationships.
Yeah, that's true. It's almost like their strength become their weaknesses, you know?
Exactly. And that can lead to a sense of isolation, loneliness, even when they achieve those amazing things. So it's not just about winning, it's about finding that balance between strength and vulnerability, between action and connection.
Okay, that's such a good point. Now, what about Westerns? Does Truby have any surprising insights about cowboys and all those gunfights?
He does, and it goes way beyond just shootouts at the OK Corral. Truby argues that the Western genre explores this complex process of building and dismantling civilizations. It's about the tension between individual freedom and societal order, the struggle to create a better world while also dealing with the cost of progress.
I love that idea. Like, Westerns are often set in this liminal space, right, on the edge of civilization where the rules are still being written.
Right, and he uses films like Shane to illustrate this point. Remember how we talked about Shane being this outsider who helps the townspeople but ultimately can't stay, can't be part of the community he helped to create?
Yeah. That's such a classic Western trope, right? The lone hero who rides off into the sunset. But you're saying Truby sees it as more than just a cool visual. It's a statement about the nature of civilization.
Exactly. It's this bittersweet reminder that progress often comes at a cost. And sometimes the very people who help build a better world are the ones who can't fully enjoy it. You know, like they've sacrificed too much or they just don't fit into that mold of conventional society.
That's such a powerful image, though. It makes me think about all those unsung heroes throughout history, the ones who fought for change but maybe didn't live to see the results.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of unsung heroes, Truby also dives into the world of the gangster, a genre that often explores that dark side of the American dream.
All right, bring on the mobsters. I'm ready for a dose of that gritty realism.
Well, Truby argues that gangster stories really expose the corrupting influence of power, wealth, ambition. He traces the evolution of the gangster, from the outlaws of the Wild West to the organized crime syndicates of the 20th century. He shows how those changing landscapes and societal structures actually shape the nature of crime and ambition.
So it's like the gangster's a product of their environment. They're driven by those same desires for success and recognition as everyone else, but they're operating in a system that's, totally rigged against them.
Exactly. And Truby points out the importance of the city as that setting in gangster stories, highlighting the contrast between wealth and poverty and those limited opportunities for people who are just trying to make it.
Right, right. It's like the city itself becomes this character, a force that shapes and corrupts the individuals who live there.
And the gangster, in a way, kind of embodies that struggle, that desire to rise above their circumstances, even if it means compromising their morals along the way.
So it's kind of like a cautionary tale, right? About the dangers of unchecked ambition and the seductive nature of power.
Precisely. And it's a reminder that the American dream, for all its promise, can also be this breeding ground for corruption and despair, especially for those who feel excluded from those traditional paths to success.
Wow, Truby's making me think about these genres in a whole new light. It's not just entertainment anymore. It's a way to understand those complexities of human behavior, the forces that shape our choices, and those enduring themes that connect us all. I'm really curious to hear what he has to say about some of the other genres, especially myth and memoir.
Well, before we move on to those, what's standing out to you about Truby's analysis so far? What's really resonating with you?
I think what's striking me the most is how he connects those seemingly disparate genres to those universal human experiences and anxieties, whether it's confronting our fears and horror, seeking meaning in myth, or grappling with ambition in gangster stories. There's this common thread that connects us to all of them. It's like he's saying stories aren't just entertainment. They're a way for us to explore those big questions about life, death, morality, the human condition.
That's a great observation. And that common thread is what makes stories so powerful. It's a way for us to process our emotions, make sense of the world around us, and connect with others who are going through similar experiences.
All right, so we've gone through some pretty intense stuff with Truby, from horror to gangster films. And what I'm really getting from all of this is that genres aren't just categories or boxes to put stories in. They're more like lenses that we can use to view the world and understand ourselves better.
Yeah, I agree. And he has some fascinating things to say about the genres we haven't gotten to yet. Like, let's start with myth.
Myth is one that I'm super curious about because, we tend to associate it with those ancient stories and gods and heroes. Does Truby think those stories still have something to teach us in the modern world?
Oh, he definitely does. Truby argues that myth isn't just about those old tales. It's a framework for understanding our place in the universe, and the challenges we face in our own lives. He sees it as a blueprint for the hero's journey, a journey that's filled with trials and transformations and ultimately self-discovery.
So it's not about taking those stories literally, but understanding the themes and patterns that are relevant to all humans, no matter what time period or culture you're from.
Exactly. And he says it's important to understand those specific beats of a myth story, like the call to adventure, the crossing of the threshold, the final revelation. He says those beats actually provide this structure for growth and transformation, not just in stories, but in our own lives as well.
I can totally see that. We all face those moments in our lives where we have to step outside our comfort zones, confront our fears, and how we navigate those challenges, the choices we make, they shape who we become.
Exactly. And Truby even draws these parallels between those classic myths and modern stories like Avatar and even A Christmas Carol, showing how those ancient patterns are still relevant today.
That's so interesting. It's like those stories tap into something fundamental about being human, something that just transcends time and culture. But one thing I've always wondered about myth is the role of gender. Are there differences between like male myths and female myths?
That's a great question. And Truby actually addresses that. He argues that male myths often focus on those more linear journeys of conquest and battle, like Odysseus or Hercules. They're all about overcoming external obstacles, achieving a specific goal.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. What about female myths?
Truby says those tend to be more cyclical, emphasizing themes of birth and death and rebirth. Like, think about Persephone, She descends into the underworld but returns to the surface each year. These stories are more about internal transformation, about those cycles of nature and the enduring power of life.
Oh, that's really cool. Makes me think about whether those patterns are still reflected in the stories we tell today. Like, do we still see those male and female approaches to storytelling?
I think we do. Think about action movies versus romantic comedies. They often follow those classic patterns. Action is all about external conflict and achieving a goal. Romantic comedies are about internal journeys and, finding love.
Oh, that's a really interesting connection. Okay, Truby's making me look at storytelling in a whole new way. Now, what about memoir? That genre seems so personal, so introspective.
It is. And Truby argues that memoir is all about examining our own lives to try and create our true selves. It's about looking back at the moments that have shaped who we are, the relationships, the challenges.
So it's not just about telling your story. It's about digging deeper, understanding why those things happened, and then using those insights to understand yourself better.
Right. And he talks about identifying that system of slavery that the memoir hero often fights against. That system could be societal expectations, family dynamics, even internal struggles.
Whoa, that's a powerful way to think about it. It's like we're all battling against something, whether it's these external forces or those inner demons we need to overcome.
Exactly. And he also says it's important to identify those deep wounds, and the shame and guilt that they can cause. Because those things can really drive the hero's journey in a memoir. It's about confronting those experiences, understanding them, and finding a way to heal.
Yeah. It's like memoir gives us this way to rewrite our own stories, not by denying the past, but by trying to understand it and use it to create a more authentic, more fulfilling future.
And it reminds us that we're not alone in those struggles.
Right.
Everyone has their battles to fight, wounds to heal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of battles and struggles, Truby's insights about science fiction seem especially relevant to the challenges we're facing today.
For sure. He argues that science fiction challenges us to make the right choices now, to try to ensure a better future for everyone. It's a genre that explores the potential consequences of our actions, especially when it comes to technology and the environment.
Yeah, science fiction has always been about imagining different futures, right? Exploring those possibilities, but also the pitfalls of progress. It's like this thought experiment on a huge scale.
Exactly. And he talks about the importance of world building in science fiction. How the land, the people, the technology all work together to create these societies.
It's amazing how those writers can create entire universes with their own rules and cultures and even species. It's like stepping into another reality.
It really is. And within those realities, Truby points out this recurring theme of the flawed human. Science fiction often becomes a warning about the dangers of unchecked ambition, technological overreach, and even the possibility of destroying ourselves.
Yeah, it's a reminder that no matter how advanced we get, we still have to deal with our own flaws and make responsible choices if we want to have any kind of future at all.
I agree. And that's really the power of stories, no matter the genre. They can entertain us, challenge us, and help us make sense of ourselves and the world.
This whole deep dive into Truby's anatomy of genres has been incredible. It's, like you said, he's given us the secret decoder ring for understanding not just the stories we watch or read, but the stories we're living ourselves.
And I think that by understanding those underlying structures and themes, we can be more thoughtful about the stories we consume, and maybe even be better storytellers ourselves.
Absolutely. It's like we have all these new tools for understanding stories, whether it's a movie, a book, even just a conversation with a friend.
And that's a good thing, right? Because, like Truby says, stories aren't just entertainment. They have this incredible power to shape our understanding of the world, influence our values, even inspire us to take action.
So to everyone listening, next time you come across a story, no matter what kind it is, pay attention. Pay attention to the genre, the themes, the characters, the choices they make. You might be surprised at what you discover, not just about the story, but about yourself and the world around you.
And remember, like Truby says, we're all storytellers. The choices we make, the actions we take, they all become part of that story that is our life. So choose your stories wisely and use them to create a more meaningful, fulfilling journey.
And that is a perfect note to end on. We hope you've enjoyed exploring the world of storytelling with us and that you'll keep these ideas in mind as you continue to encounter stories everywhere. Until next time, happy storytelling.